What's up guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of me analyzing a pro replay. And originally the plan was today on Tuesday, the 29th of September, to upload a video on Trep's PvT that he played versus Innovation. But Hassan already did that yesterday, and I don't want to do content that's already been done. And Hassan's video probably, I only watched a little bit of it, I didn't have the time, but it's probably way more intense and more detailed than mine, because I'm not aiming for a lot of detail. I'm aiming for a little bit more of beginner to medium intermediate level of expertise. So I thought, you know what, I'm not gonna upload that video unless you guys really want me to. Instead, I'm gonna do a video which was planned for next week, which is going to be on Trep's PvZ versus Wayner, and more specifically on Trep's PvZ in the grand final versus Wayner on Eternal Empire, where he went for Stalker-Colossus. Now, in my army composition video, I already talked about how there are basically two different compositions that Protoss can go for in every matchup, which is Stalker based with Robo support, or Charged Archon Immortal based with any support you really want, right? And for the longest time in PvZ, it was the most common thing to see Charged Archon Immortal, and you didn't really see anything else. But with the Baneling nerfs, and even before that, some people still went for Stalker-Colossus. And with the Baneling nerfs now, even more people are going for Stalker-Colossus. And I was waiting for a game that was inspiring enough for me to be like, yeah, let's go. Let's look at this replay and check it out. And we finally got one. So today we will go through this replay, find out how exactly Trep plays Stalker-Colossus, what the thought process behind it are, how we can simplify it for every level, and see how to play Stalker-Colossus. So let's go. Okay, so to get started, of course, PvZ is very, very scripted in the early game. Everything is very thought through. So Trep going for the pylon block, which honestly I have to start doing. I never go for the pylon hedge block. I don't know why, I just don't. But outside of that, it's just very like one gate fast expand. We get the gateway, we get the nexus, we get the cybercore, we scout for anything weird happening. Nothing weird is happening, so we harass. Nothing very interesting happening, or everything's really interesting, but nothing really out of the ordinary happening in the early game. It's just Trep has some very thorough scouting, sees the 4 links, doesn't see the 3rd hedge, scouts with 1 adept, but keeps the adept back at the vision tower, gets a 2nd adept, gets a Stargate, which is very important. We're not talking about Twilight. I should have mentioned that in the Stargate in the opening that of the video, that we talking about the Stargate opening, right? Which is the most interesting thing about it, right? So Trep goes for 2 adepts, shades in, but doesn't actually shade in. Already sees the links, so knows he will stay. But the interesting thing that's happening now, right, is that that Trep went for the Stargate. He's going for 2 oracles. He's going for 2 adept Stalker, which means he's not going to get a void ray. The Stalker is there to keep the overlords off, and then he shades the adepts away. He doesn't shade them back home, but he shades them away, right? He goes for the 2nd gateway, of course. So this is, guys, as I always say, this is what I expect you to know, how to open up in the PvZ, right? You always go for, unless you go Twilight, of course, which I would never recommend personally. You go Stargate, you go 2 gateways, you get a 2nd gateway, you grab the 2 gases, you grab a pylon, you don't get supply blocked. And then he takes the 3rd base at like about 425. Reyna doesn't have any pressuring links here. The interesting thing is Trep warps in 2 adepts, like 1 is already there. Here's the 2nd adept, right? So he wants to play it a little bit safe. You can be greedy and not do that, but I would not recommend that either. I think this entire game is so fascinating to see how to not be greedy. Similar to how in the Stats video, Stats wasn't greedy at all. He was like super defensive. Trep in this one, even though he's aggressive in this later on, he is not at all greedy. It feels like he doesn't feel pressured, which is once again giving me hope for PvZ. Anyways, so a little bit of harassment. Trep likes to go for the vision, for the stasis ward. Here you went in with a oracle. Here's the 2nd oracle here, defending at the perfect time. If you chrono boost both of your oracles, so the 2nd oracle will arrive at the perfect time. Gets the pylon in a spot where he can put a unit in between there. And then Trap goes for Forge Twilight with no Robo yet. Forge Twilight, no Robo, 2 edits we already talked about. And then he warps in 2 sentries. Right? Gets a shield battery to be extra safe. Gets a pylon here for this gateway warden. And then he gets 2 more sentries in a little bit. Kills the Overlord, of course. Here we go, 2 more sentries. Also very interesting of note, only 2 probes in the gas. I haven't noted that yet because, again, I don't want to make it too detailed. Because you probably don't have to care about that on like Master Diamond level, but just saying. And then he goes for 2 more gateways. So up to 6 in total. Blink +1. No gas, as you can see. Not losing the Stalker, wasting some force fields. And just probing up. And where do the Chronobus go? Nowhere yet. Bonus Chrono, that's interesting. I wonder if that's a mistake or not. Anyways, so we go up to 6 gateways, 7, 8 gateways before we build the Robo. And then shortly thereafter build the second Robo. So basically the way the build order works is we take the third with 2 gateways. Then we grab Twilight Forge, we grab sentries, we grab, instead of the Robos, we grab the sentries because of the gas, basically. Then we grab enough gateways to have 8 gateways, because that's like kind of the magical number for Protoss. Then we grab 2 Robos after we started Blink and +1. That is like the general thought process. And from there on out, we grab 2 more gases, and that is the build order stage of the game, right? That is the opening build order stage of the game. From now on, it's all about the scouting. It's all about posturing without actually overextending. So what we can, for example, see Trap do is move out with 4 sentries and 4 stalkers. And Raynor sees this. And Raynor talked about it in the interview after the finals where he won. Is when he talked about how he wanted to play way safer versus Trap because versus Trap you might actually just die. He said that, right? So when we look at the drone count, Raynor's on 68 drones and is building a lot of roaches, which is amazing. Because as most of you might know, usually Zerg just goes up to like 80, 90 drones and it kind of sucks. It isn't the worst thing. It is the worst thing. Let me not mince words here. Like it's kind of terrible when that happens. But Trap moves out with this little bit of Stalker sentry, just enough that Raynor sees it. Just enough that Raynor has to be prepared, while still warping in more Stalkers, a Zealot here. And then what Trap then does, which is actually belongs to the build order, he just warps in enough Stalkers that he has enough resources to start the Robotics Bay, an Observer and a Prism, which he both Chrono Boosts. He moves out a little bit more, I guess almost just enough that it's seen by the creep. So Raynor is building even more units and is now only on 73 drones. And then in the back of that, Trap just builds a 4th base. So like as you can see, it's still based around a lot of passive play. But unlike Stats, who only build static D, Trap moves out, try to force units being produced, because everything revolves around one big final attack. And like before Hive finishes at like as much supply as you can get, mostly in this game it's almost 200 supply. Because the idea is versus Zerg, this is the general idea on how PvZ works, is that your army is better on 200 supply versus 200 supply unless Zerg has Hive. So if you hit right before Hive, that's amazing. Right. But we still want to keep up with the economy, so we grab the 4th base at 730, which is a great timing. And then we just grab +2, we grab Charge, because why not Charge? After the Prism Observer, we grab 2 Immortals, which is also great to have. Robotic Space finished, so Trap will now grab the 1 Colossus, Trap will now go for the 2nd Colossus. Now there's the question, of course, while Trap loses the 4th base to the Lynx, there's of course the question of Disruptors versus Colossi. And that's a tricky question, right? Because like in general, Colossi are just the more solid option. You have the range, if you don't forget Thermal Lance, which I always forget about because I'm not used to Colossi in PvZ yet. You have the range, you have the more consistent damage output, and they just fit very nicely to Stalker Sentry because everything in that army has range, and then Sentry's force field units out where Colossi shoot in constantly. It's amazing. It's easier to control. On the other hand, of course, Disruptors also fit in well. They just are a little bit more gimmicky, a little bit less consistent, and I would prefer Colossi unless your opponent goes very heavily on Roaches. In which case, well, Disruptors are really amazing. And versus Lurkers and Hydras, of course, Hydras die to Colossi, but versus Lurkers, Disruptors aren't too bad either until they have Hive. But you guys, every Brothers knows when they have Hive and they have Lurkers, man. Kinda sucks. Anyways, so Trap retakes the 4th base. As you can maybe already see, while Trap is building up the army, Trap of course doesn't have a bank, right? But keep the lack of bank in mind because that's going to be a major disadvantage of Stalker Sentry. So Trap is taking the 4th base. Of course, he's not getting as much static D as Stasis gets, but still gets enough static D to survive, which is very important. He grabs the DT Shrine, which is very interesting. So in my games, I usually have too much gas, so I grab the High Templar Archives. The D Shrine has the advantage that it fits nicely into the Stalker Colossus in terms of how much resources you spend. Because with Stalker Colossus, you usually don't have enough gas. When Trap plays it, not enough gas over to get a lot of Archons with High Templars. DTs cost less gas, but of course, as we know, it's less resource efficient overall. But it's interesting that Trap doesn't get the gases on the 4th base, which pin that. It's still very important to think about, similar to the bank. So now Trap, if you didn't notice, constantly scouts around the map, as you can see here with the hallucinated Phoenix, to just genuinely check for what Wayne is going for. That's the beauty about the sentries. You have the oracles to scout with, you have the sentries to scout with. It's amazing, right? And what you mainly want to scout for, like the main thing, is, of course, are you gonna get storm hosted? Are you gonna get muted on or something? But the main thing is, are you gonna grab Hive? Oh, sorry, is your opponent gonna grab Hive? And then you kind of just want to hit before Hive kicks in, which is not before Hive finishes, unless you already have 200 supply at that point and go ham, but before it kicks in, because the Vipers still have to be built, right? And then they have to get energy. So you have a little bit of leeway when Hive finishes, right? But as you can see, Trap sees it or saw it already with the Phoenix. You didn't see that, but he already saw it. So he's gonna move out now. He's got 10 sentries, which is a fuck ton of force fields. He's got a DT Shrine on the way. As you can see, 4th base has no gas. 5th base is going to be taken a little bit. But I want you guys to notice one important thing, right? And that's just how resource intensive the style is compared to Archon, Charge, or Immortal. For the simple reason that Stalkers cost both minerals and gas. And not a little bit of gas, like quite a lot if you think about it when you build a lot of Stalkers. So the problem with the style... Okay, let's put it this way. The good thing about the style is you can be a little bit more aggressive. It's really fun to play. It's very micro-intensive, but not in a as punishing sense as Archon Immortal Charge Shot can be. Because with Archon Immortal Charge Shot Storm, 2 bandings go to your Templar, you're dead. Sucks, feels bad. GG. With sentries it's the same thing, but you can do panic force fields, and then hopefully it works out. At least to me it feels that way. The problem is that because of Stalkers, the transition into Skytos is basically impossible. It's basically impossible unless your Zerg never goes for Hive. Where that means that you can just get 200 supply and then not trade out unless they want to trade. Until they have Hive, you don't have to care. So you just go to Skytos. But if you play with a good Zerg, you can never go to Skytos with this, because you will never have a bank for that. You just won't. Again, unless you have, or the more power to you, right? So in this game, again, Trap moves out before Hive. I mean, Hive is finished, but before Hive kicks in. And now he has to worry about these bandings, and he takes an engagement. Unfortunately, this Colossus fucks up the last force field with like tiny bit of space. Really horrible moment. Trap still kind of saves it, but as you can see, it was clearly a bad fight for Trap, but not too bad. It could have been better, but not too bad. Now Trap drops in 4 DTs for Archons, because Archons soak up a lot of damage, and then he just keeps trying to take fights with 5 Colossi. If you're wondering about the amounts of Colossi you're building, I wouldn't generally say, because you have a timer. You just build it as many Colossi as you want to until you have to hit. 6 Colossi is probably the most you should get though, because you still need other units, right? And then Archons aren't bad. As you can see, Trap now is mixing in Archons from DTs, because he doesn't have a lot of gas, especially because he's not mining from the 4th base. He takes a 5th base behind this. So this is not an all-in the classical sense, but you kinda have to make something work here. Otherwise, it will hurt you in the long run, because Hive is already out. But now, unfortunately, Trap takes a horrible fight, because he doesn't have any more force fields. Because he wasted a lot of force fields in the prior fight. And that's really kind of the problem. It still kind of works out, right? And this is important for you to notice. It still works out. So Trap got 2 non-ideal engagements versus Reyna, and it still worked out. It still somewhat worked out, right? Now the problem is going to become, so Trap is still going to push, which is good, but he pushes a tiny bit too much by blinking Stalkers into the army of Reyna, and loses a tiny bit too much. The charge shots die to the Banings completely, and that is where Trap loses the fight. And Colossus on their own are horrible, as you know. He recalls with these 3 Colossi, loses all 3 of them because of it, and now Reyna is still in 79 drones. And as I said, it is not really a classical all-in, but it's still kind of a final push, because Trap didn't take the gases, because that is not resource efficient for the push. He has the 4th base. Like, it's not that Trap has a horrible economy. He's on 69 probes. It's okay. It's just that you don't have anywhere to transition, and Zerg now has a Hive. And now you're fucked. And that's going to be the rest of the game, honestly. Reyna's just gonna... I mean, Reyna in this series was kind of weird, where he either didn't get a Hive, or he got Hive, but he still just played Ravager, Roach, Baneling, and rolled over Trap when he could. It was a pretty close series, but that was very fascinating to me. Trap went for 4 Immortals afterwards, probably because Immortals build faster as well. But Immortals on their own aren't actually that good versus Ravagers, because Ravagers aren't armored. And now Reyna just walks over Trap with a Hive, with Greater Spy on the way, with a better economy, because Trap didn't quite do the damage that he wanted to do. And that's... He does an amazing move right here. I love this move so much. We all did. But it's not going to be enough, because now Corruptors will be out. Disruptors are being built now, because now the army consists of a lot of... More Ravager? Actually, another idea with Disruptors is also that Disruptors are really good in low eco situations, which this isn't. Panic Disruptors are a thing. Come on, we all get that. But yeah, Trap does one last try to get a good fight, and it works out almost decently. Like, we had hope when we were watching this, but it didn't quite work out. He shoots 1 Disruptor. Reyna is too good though. Dodges the Prism, also dead. And well, I mean, he still has some units left, but and Reyna doesn't have a bank anymore, but it's just too much from Reyna, just too much. So that was the replay I wanted to go through. We don't have to watch the last 36 seconds. Trap lost the entire economy. Trap lost the 5th base. Trap is on 32 workers versus 72. But this is the interesting new, but not really new style. That Trap, I think, did a really good job of, because he showed just how patient you still can be, even when you have to go for timing. You just have to know your key PvZ timings, which is checking for the Hive, which is of course checking for weird tech, but mostly checking for the Hive, building Stalkers, and building Colossi, and then just hitting at either 200 supply, or like getting enough supply up so when Zerg goes for Hive, you can just go for it, and doing some small move outs to force Zerg to build units which are without ever committing. This build is very safe because you're still going for Stargate, so you can't just... I mean, you can still die to Speedling All-Ins, but it's less likely to die to Speedling All-Ins. And in terms of weird things that Zerg might be doing versus Swarmers, I'm not exactly sure how it plays out, but the general concept of playing versus Swarmers still stands, of like trying to get as much supply as possible, because Swarmers become horrible at 200 supply, don't lose Nexi, and Blink Stalkers are the worst if you micro with shield batteries versus Swarmers. Versus Muters, you can either go into double Stargate Phoenix because you have a Stargate, or you just build more Stalkers. I'm not sure which I prefer. It really depends on the situation. Sometimes I just like to build a lot of Stalkers and then just walk over the map when I see the spire fast enough. If you have shield batteries and cannons, it's okay. If you then get cannons, if you then get disruptors versus the Roach Ravager, it's okay. It depends on the economic situation, really. And versus Lurkers, it goes into the normal Lurker style. You just have to keep in mind that you can't really transition into late game too easily. It is possible, especially if you like later transition into Archons, because then you have better control over how much gas versus how many minerals you spend. Minerals for static D and Zealots and gas for Archons. And you have more control because every Archon counts so much more than one Stalker. Or like 3 Stalkers. Like one Archon, I would always take one Archon over 3 Stalkers. It's just that Stalkers fit better into the Colossus composition. Right? And that is the general thought process, guys. I don't think I've missed anything other weird stuff that Zerg can do. The general concepts of every PvZ stay the same, right? Hive timing is the important timing. Guys, I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope this is going to be a great addition to the stats video that I did about 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment. Also, of course, as always, I stream every day, Monday to Friday, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Link down below. Also, alpha coaching. I should start mentioning that at the beginning of these analysis videos. I think that might be a good idea. But I do also offer coaching. For more information, check my Twitch channel actually, because I don't have coaching information below my YouTube videos yet. Actually, I should do that this video. Check description down below. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Love you all. Take care. Peace.